Welcome to the Increda-dental podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Flynn. Our goal is to make a positive impact in the dental field. I have been a dental assistant, a biller, an office manager, a scheduler, a hygienist, and a dental coach, which makes me your biggest fan. My husband was in the military and we traveled all over the United States. I had opportunities to work in many different practices, and I saw incredible practices and practices that had a lot of potential within them. Thank you for joining us. Let's dive into the podcast. Welcome to the Increda-dental podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Flynn. Today we're going to speak about financing companies, questions that we need to ask them to protect the practice, but also to protect the patient. First thing I want to make sure that we do, though, is that we understand and have the front office and the staff members, the back office, on board, that they understand that by offering a case acceptance, it increases, by offering financing, it increases case acceptance. And this is what I mean. A lot of times patients do not move forward with treatment because they feel like they don't have the funds for that. And when patients are offered a financing company, they move forward with treatment. On average, case acceptance is anywhere from 34 to around 50%. When patients are offered a financing opportunity, case acceptance increases anywhere from 12 to 30%. And we need to make sure that the front office and the back office understand that by offering a financing for them, that it helps the patient move forward with treatment. Because what happens if they don't is that the decay gets larger and deeper, and patients are more likely to need more treatment, a root canal or an implant. They're more likely to need more treatment if they wait. So by offering a financing opportunity through a third party, you're actually saving them money in the long run. So sometimes people get upset and say, I don't want the patient to get more in debt, but they're going to get more in debt if they don't do their treatment. So it's a really amazing opportunity to help your patients move forward with their treatment. Now, when you speak to financing companies, there are certain questions you really need to ask to help protect your patients and your practice. So a couple of things you want to find out is the application process. You want to find out, do they need to apply on a laptop or a computer, or can they do so on their phone? And then find out how much information they need. Some of the information they need is very simple, like date of birth, how long they've lived at their residence, how much or estimate of their monthly income. So some of it, they only ask like 3 or 4 questions. Other times, some of the financing companies, they want the driver's license number. They want to know how long they've lived in the state. And it can be kind of tedious. So find out what they ask for on the application process, because that will really narrow down which financing companies you use. And then find out how long the application process takes. Some take as little as 90 seconds. Other financing companies take 5 minutes. So know how much time it takes and be aware of the impact of the staff time of having the staff guide their patients through the financing application, how much it takes of their time as well. Another question to ask the financing company is what % of the credit does the patient need to have to be approved? Now, some financing companies will be a little misleading. They'll say, well, we offer financing to everyone, or we offer financing to anyone who has a credit score above 520. But what you need to understand is how often. Maybe they offer someone who has a credit score of 520, 1 out of every 1,000 patients that apply. So be aware how often they do this, because it will affect whether or not the patient is approved. And when I tell patients about the financing option, I let them know kind of at a higher credit score. So that way I know if it's a good thing for them to apply or not. So let's say a financing company, traditionally the patient needs to have a credit score of over 600. I'll just let them know this financing company does a great job of financing patients and their needs to get their treatment done. Usually a credit score over 600, they approve that. I don't know if you want to apply or not, but I just want to let you know what you're looking at to get approved. And a lot of times the patient may pause and be like, oh, I should work on my credit history. I'm not quite there yet. I'll let them know that's not a problem. In a couple of months, when their credit score is a little bit better, they can try and apply at that time. So find out what the credit score is, how often they approve someone on the lowest rate that they give you, the lowest credit score they give you. Another thing you need to know is find out if the 0% interest is a true no interest. They'll say there's 12 months no interest, but a lot of times there's a back fee that if the patient doesn't have every penny of that paid off within that 12 months, let's say they owe $1 and they didn't pay off that last dollar, they'll accrue all that interest from those 12 months. So you want to find out, is it true no interest for 12 months or 6 months, or will they occur all that credit from that time from day one to the time that they pay it off? This is really important to note because if the patient has a bad experience with this financing company, they'll relate it to also the dental office. So find out very clearly if it's 0% interest, and if not, for how long, and what the patient's looking at, and be very clear on what that looks like. Most people do not pay off their 0% interest over 50%. So you want to make sure that the patient has a very clear understanding what that looks like so they're not surprised by the bill. Really investigate. Ask a lot of questions back because they won't give you the answer unless you ask a little bit deeper into the financing company. We talked about the credit scores, but when we have a financing company that does what's called a soft credit score, it doesn't have an impact on the patient's credit score. If they do what's called a hard credit check, that does have an impact on the patient's credit score. So find out if the financing company does a hard or soft credit score check, because that can impact the patient's financing opportunity. Also learn if they charge late fees. Some financing companies do not charge a late fee. Some charge a very large late fee, and then they start charging the interest even though it was supposed to be the 12 months or 6 months interest free. So be aware, if they miss a payment, there may be a big bill coming to them because they weren't paying it on time. Also ask if there's a waiting period. This is kind of crazy, but they can be approved for financing, but they have a 30-day waiting period or a week waiting period. So you want to find out, is there a waiting period to the patient? And if so, how long is that waiting period? And then for the clinic, you want to find out how much is the office being charged for using this financing, because there is a fee to the practice. And find out if the practice is paid in full or in partial payment, if they're paid over time. And then how long does it take to get the financing to the practice? So let's say a patient applies and they say it's 5 business days. So basically it's 1 week before you have that payment from the financing company. Find out if they only do partial payment and the patient stops paying the financing company. Does that financing company stop paying the practice? And is there a fee to the practice for that? Also, another question that can get really hairy is refunds. Let's say the patient doesn't complete treatment. They choose to have a tooth extracted instead of having a root canal and a crown on that tooth. And so maybe the treatment plan isn't as costly as originally thought, and that there's a refund for the patient. Do you refund it to the financing company or do you refund it to the patient? How do you go about that? Another question I really like to ask the financing company is if this amount is reusable. Let's say a patient comes in, they have treatment, around $3,000 worth of treatment, and then a year later, they have another $1,000 that needs to be done. Maybe they're not quite done paying off that first amount. Can they add that, roll it into one bill, or do they now need to have 2 separate bills? One for the first time of initial treatment and one for the second time when they had to have more treatment done. It's worth asking because it can have a big impact on the patient's finances. Another thing to learn is to whether or not they will help you with your website. Like if they'll have a QR code on your website, they'll help you with marketing. And if they're based in the United States or in another country, learn what their hours of operation are so you can call them and find out if you have questions regarding a financing for a patient. And also find out if they have a dashboard. Dashboards are really helpful. You can log in, see if the patient's been approved for how much, and then you can call the patient and let them know they're ready to go for treatment. Dashboards are really useful. So I encourage you to have a financing company that has a dashboard, and then find out the conversion rate. Talk to other dental offices, healthcare facilities that have used this financing company, because it will really let you see their true colors. A lot of financing companies will kind of make it sound like everything's roses, and then there's some secret hidden fees, or there's some underlying rules that they didn't tell you about. So talk to other practices who have used this company and read the reviews. Check them out carefully because you want to have a really good experience with this company. And then find out if they help train your staff. Is the training ongoing? Do they give feedback and updates? Does the staff have access to live support if needed? These things will help encourage your staff to continue to recommend the financing department, the financing group that you choose to use. And the last thing is you want to make sure that this financing company rewards your staff. Because what happens is that first the staff gets all excited about offering this financing for the patients. The patients will accept treatment. But after a while, it gets cumbersome. It becomes more challenging to deal with. It's just another thing on their plate. So you want to make sure that the financing company rewards your staff, maybe with a gift card or lunch, but you want to make sure that they give recognition for what your team is doing, helping your patients complete their treatment, keeping them from pain. So these are great questions to ask a financing company when you're looking at different groups. Not all of them are perfect fits. Be aware that there are a lot of things that can be improved in this area, but you want one that will safeguard your patients as well as your practice and help it to be easier for patients to say yes to treatment. Thanks for joining me.